Hi, my name is Mike Dillard, and this is Self-Made Man, the podcast for men who want to leave their mark on the world and create a legacy of honor, integrity, and achievement in every aspect of their lives. I'm glad you're here, and once again, it is time to forge your destiny. This week, we have an opportunity to welcome back a longtime friend of mine and one of the smartest entrepreneurs that I know, Mr. Russel Brunson. Now, for those of you who don't know Russel, he is the founder of the incredibly popular ClickFunnels platform and is the guy people like myself and Tony Robbins turn to for marketing advice. Well, over the last 18 months, Russel needed to figure out how to grow his software company, ClickFunnels, and he was faced with some pretty significant challenges. Primarily, how do you acquire new software customers profitably? And second, how do you get them to learn the system and stick with the platform over the long term? Well, he figured it out over the past year, and ClickFunnels has grown to over 40,000 active users with an average monthly membership fee of $197. If you do the math, that's about $8 million per month in recurring revenue. Absolutely astonishing. But what's most interesting is the three strategies that he's used to grow that membership and retain it. It was not by studying the latest online marketing strategies. He actually found them by studying charismatic leaders and the social dynamics used by cults, religions, and political figures in order to create movements. This was by far and away one of the most valuable and fascinating interviews that we have ever had here on Self-Made Man. I'm not going to ruin it or go into it further. This is a must-listen episode. He goes into an incredible amount of detail, and you will absolutely want to take notes. So with that being said, please help me welcome Russel Brunson. Mr. Russel Brunson, welcome back to the show, brother. Glad to have you here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. So, about 2 or 3 months ago, you and I had an opportunity to go hang out with our mutual friend, Dean Graziosi, and a few other rock stars in this world. And it was essentially a one-day mastermind where we had a chance to stand up and present some of the most exciting stuff that was working for our companies and our businesses. And you got up and you gave a presentation that left everybody flabbergasted, frankly, taking pictures, scribbling notes, and dying to get a copy of essentially what was a manuscript at the time, but is now a book called Expert's Secret. So I'm super excited to have you here today to share that formula with us because it was unbelievably impressive. And after you gave the presentation, I was like, gosh, dang it, why didn't I think of that? So yeah, welcome to the show, man. Let's dive in.
Oh, that's so awesome. No, it was fun. It's cool because I think we bump into each other like once or twice a year at random things, and it's always like at a cool spot. And that was like so super fun and a fun day where we all got so many cool ideas, and it was just fun to have a chance to kind of share some of the stuff that we're working on. And I'm excited to share this with all of your men. It's gonna be awesome.
So you have built just a phenomenally successful software company in the form of ClickFunnels, which is what we've based my List Grow course on now, List Grow 2.0. I don't know if you want to share some numbers as far as the membership goes and what's created that, but Expert Secrets was essentially what you discovered growing that business. Correct me if I'm wrong, but it's how do you create a huge following? How do you create a tribe and the psychology behind it? But let's start with the massive success curve that ClickFunnels has experienced over the last 36 months.
Yeah. It's been, in fact, it's fun because like my first time on your show was right when ClickFunnels was kind of like starting to take off, and so it's been fun, kind of looking back since then. But yeah, we as of today, we I think last week passed 42,000 active members, and so that's people paying anywhere from $97 to $297 a month, and it's been like the ride of my life, like trying to keep up with it all and trying to just do all this stuff, and we're having a great time with it. And it's been interesting though because as you know, like when we launched ClickFunnels, like a couple months later, when my very first book came out, which was .com Secrets, and that book was all about like kind of like the science of this business, like how do you do funnels and structuring and all those kind of pieces, right? And I feel like that as a community of entrepreneurs, like people are starting to understand and grasp funnels and like conceptually, a lot of them like have funnels, and then I look at them and I'm like, well, conceptually, like that's right, like the structure is there, you did the science right, but as you know, like this business, there's the art and the science. There's like, okay, here's the structure of how things work, but then there's like the art, and like me and you would call it like copy, or the words, or the persuasion, or all the things that actually go in it. And I was like, our marketplace is getting really good at the science, but they're not making money or changing people's lives because they suck at the art of it. And the art is like the other piece, like how do you communicate with your audience and how do you get people excited and how do you get people to follow you, all those kind of things. And that's kind of was the premise of the second book was like, okay, you guys understand that, like, let's get into this. Like, how do you communicate correctly and how do you do it in a way that gets people to not just buy from you once, but to buy from you over and over and over again. And because when you do that, like then this business gets so much more fun because it's not just a transactional thing. It becomes something where you're actually serving people and legitimately trying to change their lives. And that's why, kind of the premise of why this book and how it kind of came out of, the middle of this whole ClickFunnels rollout.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go through the formula because it was freaking genius, frankly.
Cool. So a couple of things to kind of preface this. So about the time I was launching ClickFunnels, I was just trying to get ideas. Like, this is my first time doing a software company. I've never done that before. I'm not a technical person. So I have geniuses who are building the software. And like my role was like, okay, Russell, you got to sell this thing. I'm like, okay, well, I don't know how to do that. Like I sold the information, I sold supplements, but like software was kind of a new thing. And so I remember, I actually went to a network marketing event that there was a software company. And I go to this event, there's probably 5,000 or 6,000 people. I know you've been at network marketing events before. I just wanted to kind of see like what they were doing. I go to this event and there's a huge auditorium and everyone's going crazy. And it was like 3 or 4 days long. And what was crazy is people are up there and like they're standing on stage telling their story about the software and like they're crying and like they're like all these things are happening. And I was like so confused because I'm like, this is a software company and they're not teaching the software, right? Like they weren't doing anything other than just like everyone telling their stories. And it was like super emotional and it was interesting. I was sitting next to one of my friends and he looked at me, he said, do you see what's happening? And I was like, I kind of do, but I don't really get it. And he was like, they're a software company, but they're not selling software. He's like, they've created a movement. And when he said that, I was like, oh my gosh. Cause like, honestly, if you look at the software, like it's really not that good, but people were like in tears telling their story about them using it. And like that just rang in my head over and over again. Like they're not selling software. They've created a movement. And I was like, how do you create a movement? And so it's like, as we were launching ClickFunnels, that was like the thing that came going through my head. Like, how do you create a movement? And so I was like, well, who's created this stuff in the past? And so I started looking, initially it was like looking at businesses. And so, I think the first thing that most entrepreneurs like us go to, we look at like Steve Jobs, like what did he do? And so I'm looking at that and looking at Apple. I'm like, okay, interesting. And then I was like, what are other companies? And then I had some friends who told me they're like, you should read some books about like how to build cults. I'm like, what? And like, yeah, like these, like obviously they're negative, but like they're doing some, like they work for a reason. And so I started studying like these books, like how people build cults. And I'm like, weird. Like it was interesting looking at like the things that they were doing to build cults, how similar to like what maybe Steve Jobs had done to build Apple. And then like I started looking at like religious movements and I was like, the ones that had huge success, like they were doing the same things that the cults were doing. And I was looking at like political parties and the successful candidates were doing the same things. And it didn't matter like which end of the spectrum, like super negative side of this world. Like you look at like Hitler and the Nazi party and what he did was almost identical to like the opposite side of the spectrum with like Christ and Christianity. And as I was looking at this, I started seeing like this pattern that like just started like in my mind became clear. Like there's a pattern that every one of these movements has from the beginning of time. And it didn't matter if it was religion or politics or business, like they had it. And as soon as my favorite thing about patterns, as soon as you identify the pattern, then it's like you can look at it and you can try to figure out how to amplify it. So identify the pattern, and that's like the first chapter, but it's like the framework of the entire Expert Secrets book. And basically, there's 3 things like every mass movement has. So number 1, they all have like a charismatic leader, or I call it an attractive character. And it's funny because every time I share this with somebody, I always get somebody that's like, well, that's true in like your kind of business, Russell, you're selling information products, but it's not true in real businesses. I'm like, really? Well, like, I was like, what about Apple? Like, who was their charismatic leader? And like, oh, well, Steve Jobs, but like that was a one-off. Like, okay, well, what about Tesla? Like, who's their charismatic leader? And like, oh, well, and like I started to make 5 or 6 companies that are all happen to be like the biggest, fastest growing companies. And they're like, okay, I guess that is like a key piece of it, right? Like we want to plug into somebody. I think Jay Abraham was one that said like human beings, like they're silently begging to be led. Like we want to plug into something. And so like the movements that are happening, there's that person, right? So that's number 1. Number 2 is that all of them had a future-based cause that they're taking people towards. And as I was doing the research for this, it was interesting. It was in the middle of the presidential elections, and I was writing the chapter on this and going really deep into it as I'm watching the debates. And I was looking at it, I was like interested because all of the mass movements that were having success, they were all based on like this future-based thing. It was never talking about the present. and I'm looking at like just the candidates at the time, and it doesn't matter which side you go for. Like, this is really interesting. Like, you look at Hillary, like her campaign slogan at the time was like, Hillary, I'm with her. Like, that was the sign I saw on the screen as I'm looking here. And then you see Trump's, and his was Make America Great Again, future-based cause. And I was like, huh. And then, as we know, Trump won. And I started looking at it, like, I wonder if I go backwards in time, like if that keeps happening. So look back at like both of Obama's platforms, and his campaign slogans were all about change, like this thing happening, in the future. And the people that lost were all like, they were all future based. And I went all the way back to Washington, like, and almost every campaign slogan, the winner always was talking about a future based cause, and the loser was always talking about a present thing. Like, it was so insane. I'm not saying that's the reason why they won, but I think it's a big part of it. Like, people don't have faith in the present. They want to move towards something like the greener pastures or whatever that thing is. And so for us in ClickFunnels, I started building our movement. I'm like, well, what is it for us? Like, what's this future-based thing that people are moving towards? And at first I didn't know, but as soon as you identify the pattern, then it's like, now we can like, how do we amplify that? How do we change that? And in the book, I go through 4 or 5 things that we've done to create that future-based cause. But one of the biggest ones for us was just, we have this whole concept now inside of our community. We always talk about like, you're just one funnel away. And people are like, one funnel away from what? And it's like, well, it depends on, like, everyone's different. Like, for you, like, you may want a funnel because you have a job you hate and you want to leave it. And you're literally one funnel away from that. And we talk about different people that have had that thing happen to them. And then, other people, it's like, well, I'm doing my own business. I'm having fun, but I'm not having the impact I want. We're like, you're literally one funnel away from that impact. Like, you get the right funnel in place, like, you can instantly affect millions more people. And like, this is this future-based thing we're always talking about in our community. And now it's like everyone's like, I see people all the time talking about that, looking forward to that. And again, there's a bunch of things that we do in the book related to this. And what's cool about it is, I tried this book not to just be theory-based, because like, I hate books that are like, here's the theory. So like, everything in here is like, here's the theory. And then it's like, here's how we did it inside of like ClickFunnels. And then you guys can just copy it. And then I'm like, oh, here's 3 or 4 other people that are in my inner circle who did it like in the weight loss market. Here's how they did it over here. And like, and you start seeing like the pattern. Then you guys can take those ideas and just rip them off for whatever business that you're in. So that was number 2. So number 1, again, is charismatic leader. Number 2 is like this future-based cause. And then number 3, and this is like the least understood and the most important, is that every one of these mass movements, they didn't offer their people like a way to improve and become better. Like, inherently, we think we want to improve, but we don't. Like, they always offer their followings a new opportunity. And so the best way to kind of describe a new opportunity is to talk about the opposite, which is an improvement offer. So an improvement is like, I'm going to help you to become better or smarter or faster. And there's a whole bunch of problems with that. Like, the one thing is like, if I'm going to give you money and pay you to help me become smarter, then I have to admit that I'm dumb. And there's this really weird like psychological struggle that we all have with that. Another interesting thing is like, if you look at the masses of the world, most people are not like ambitious, right? We think we are, but like the majority, like I would say 2 to 3% of the world is actually ambitious. And so when you're selling improvement and you're trying to get people to improve, you're selling towards people's ambitions. And so by just the default of you doing that, like 98% of the entire world, like you just shut them out because they're like, I'm not ambitious. And the problem is a lot of times us as entrepreneurs, like we are the 2% who are ambitious. And so that's how we would sell ourselves. And so we go and we try to sell ambition, and then like it doesn't convert because the masses don't want ambition. What the masses want, like everybody has desire. Very few people have ambition, but everybody has desire. And so we offer somebody a new opportunity that it plays off of that desire. Like Steve Jobs, when he came out, if you remember his keynote speeches, he didn't come out and say, hey guys, this is the deal. You've got CD players now that play 12 songs. We have a CD player now that'll play 200 songs. Because people are like, well, I already got a CD player. Like it's an improvement. Like that doesn't get people excited. Instead, he stood up there on stage and said, look guys, like the day of CDs is done. And he pulls out this little thing from his pocket. He's like, this is the iPod. There's 3,000 songs on it. Like, this is the new opportunity. Like, you can go and burn out, like, delete all your DVDs, their CDs, they're gone forever. Like, this is the new opportunity. And people went nuts. Same thing, he brought out the phone, right? It wasn't like, oh, we made a phone a little bit better, we improved it. It's like, no, this is the iPhone. Like, this is not a phone. This is the future. That's the big thing, is like when you're creating a movement, it's all about how you structure that initial thing that you're offering to the world. And it's got to be a new opportunity. Does that kind of make sense?
Yeah, no, that's great. That's fantastic. Yeah, I'm sitting here thinking about my own businesses and, obviously how I could apply this, this philosophy to it. And the big question I have goes back to the charismatic leader part. And just to kind of play devil's advocate on that, it absolutely positively works without a doubt. And in fact, it's so freaking effective that it's really hard to get away from. So, my goal moving forward is to build a business that does not rely on me or that I'm not a part of, because I don't want that dependency to be there, right? So, that's, but at the same time, you're saying like that's one of the most important parts of it and to it, and it needs to be there. And I'm like, well, what should I do? So,
the dilemma.
Right.
I think it's really interesting, because you're right. Like, and one thing is, as I know you're aware of, is like, if you are the brand, it becomes really hard to sell as well, because like you're that person.
Right.
It's like you can't sell. But what's interesting, so I thought about that too, with like, especially when we launched ClickFunnels, like how do I do this in a way that I could walk away in the future and it's not just me? So if you look at like, it's interesting. If you look at ClickFunnels, people associate it with me, but like I'm not on it. Like my face isn't on the page, it's not anywhere. And I've kind of positioned like me, like Russel Brunson in my mind is like, in fact, that's why I have the books and the core. Like I am a huge advocate of ClickFunnels, and I am an affiliate, and I'm this outside person.
It's almost like you're the spokesperson.
I'm the spokesperson, but just for people who know who I am. So what's been interesting is as I've tried really hard over the last 2.5 years I don't want to be the only person in here. Like I want to create other attractive characters in other different markets. So like if you look at right now, like in the fitness market, right? Like Bedros, Bedros, like
yep.
Go to a Bedros event. He goes and he is the attractive character. He's a charismatic. He's got this huge following of people. But then what's interesting is then Bedros teaches people ClickFunnels, and he brings people into ClickFunnels, and like in that world, people don't know who I am. They know who he is, and that's their connection. And we have that happening in tons of different markets. And so for me, it was strategic. Like I want eventually to be in the different segments of the markets we're going into, people who just not just me. It's other people who are kind of doing that, because short term, you being the main face of it is what helps it grow. Long term, I feel, is having multiple faces of something. That way, if you wanted to disappear into the night, you can. And that's a big part of my whole strategy. Is why we have a certification program. We certify people. I have people out teaching and selling and doing funnels. I'm trying more and more to get as many advocates and fans and followers to become that as possible, because that takes a lot of the stress and the pressure off of me, especially something we want to sell. I want to be like, look, Russell's just one of like 300 people who are all doing this. And that's been kind of our strategy. So
very cool. Very cool. One of the things that I've thought was really, really interesting that you guys have been doing is you put a lot of effort and work into the community building and the recognition side of this. And I don't know if I can't think of a better word than personality, but I get frequently plastic superheroes from you in the mail, and you have your ClickFunnel like affiliate platinum gold records and all of that. Walk people through some of these campaigns that you guys are using to really create community within the company.
Cool. So all those things, again, it comes back to this initial framework. So they're all tied to the future-based cause. So there's a couple of cool things in there. One of the concepts is in my future-based cause, like we talked about, like one funnel away. So this is like where people are going. But then inside, I want people to feel like this is their company, not Russell's company. So like, how do you do that? Like, and initially I didn't know how to do that, but I just felt that like I want people thinking like this is their company. Because if it's like, oh, there's Russell's company, ClickFunnels, and no one's going to care about it. I want them to care as much as I do. So it's like, how do we get people to feel belonging in that? And so initially it was kind of a mistake. Like we had this problem called churn, and I'm like, how do we reduce churn? And so initially this became like, we made these t-shirts just for people in the office, and they said funnel hacker on it. And like, we all loved it because it was like, we put on like, I'm a funnel hacker. And like, we always wore these shirts. So we had a big box of them here. And I was like, what if in our onboarding, because like the people that cancel is because they don't use ClickFunnels. So what if we said like, watch this 12-minute onboarding video, and if you do, I'll ship you a shirt. Like I'll pay for the shipping, and you just watch the video, I'll send you a free shirt. And that was kind of an experiment. So we did it. So someone signed up for ClickFunnels, and the first page is like, hey, this is Russell. Watch this 12-minute video, I'll send you a free shirt. I'll even cover the shipping. And people started doing it. And interesting, our churn like dropped. It was we had like 2 or 3 things that dropped churn. That was one of the biggest ones that dropped churn. And then we started shipping out these shirts to people. And now we're at the point where we ship out like thousands and thousands of shirts a week that say funnel hacker on it. And what's funny is we did it for a while. And then our, the accountant side of our business came in, and they're like, we're spending so much money sending out t-shirts. Like, we need to stop. And it was interesting because I came back and And we were thinking about shutting the whole thing down and stopping. And I got a weird random message in the middle of the night from some dude. And he was like, hey, I just want to let you know, like, I signed up for ClickFunnels 3 or 4 months ago. He's like, I've never logged in before, but I'm still paying the $97 a month. And I think the reason why is like, I got this really cool Funnel Hacker shirt from you. And I'm part of this Funnel Hacker, like Facebook group. And like, I feel like I'm part of something bigger than myself. So even though I don't use your software, like, I don't cancel because like, I'm a funnel hacker. And I was like, that is the most fascinating thing in the world. Like, because he felt like I am a funnel hacker. I'm part of this thing. Like, he stuck even though he wasn't using our software. And so because of that, I was like, we're letting this ride. We're going to keep sending out shirts. And so we kept doing that. And so now, like, when I go to a marketing event, it's insane. Like, I will see tons of people wearing like shirts. And again, the QR shirts, they all self-identify. So we have one that says funnel hacker, one that says I build funnels. Like, it self-identifies people with our movement. And so first time I shared that, we have a couple in my inner circle, and they're in the weight loss space. And they're like, well, how do we do that? And I was like, I don't know, how do people self-identify with you? And her name is Kaylin Poland, and her main name is Kaden Tool. And so initially she was like, her brand was Tool Time Trainer. And, because that's what it was her main name. And she was like, she loved that, but she realized she's like, my people can't associate with that. Like, I'm a Tool Time Trainer. Like, that was her. It wasn't like her community. So she's like, I can't build a community based on my existing brand. And they were already doing multiple millions of dollars a year. And they're like, we have to change everything. So on her flight home from one of our meetings, she like was thinking, what's the name? And then for her, she's like, I'm going to shift our movement and call it Lady Boss Weight Loss. And she's like, that way people say, like, I'm a lady boss. And she got home, and the first thing she did is design shirts to say, I'm a lady boss. And then she put those out to her community, and not counting everything else they do, but just like their t-shirt line of people saying, I'm a lady boss. And they do like hundreds of thousands of dollars. Just people wanting to wear her brand. And now people are like, I'm a lady boss. I'm a lady boss. And that's cool from like a feel good standpoint. But then the actual numbers, they dropped their churn, from 38% dropped to like 26%, which is the equivalent of them was like $2.5, $3 million a year in decrease in churn by having people wear I'm a lady boss. Like, it's so dumb and weird. But like, when people start associating and being part of you and your movement and your brand, they stick and they stay longer. So that's just one kind of like, there's one tactic inside the cause. Another one that's cool is I call this in the book, I call it breaking the 4-minute mile. Like, I want my audience to be striving against future based, like moving towards something, right? And I was thinking back about like, when I got in this business, I'm sure you remember this, Mike, because we got started about the same time, but it was when John Reese did his $1 Million Day. Do you remember?
Sure.
I remember vividly where I was sitting, what happened when I opened the email and he said he made $1 million in a day. First guy in our industry to do it. And at the time, it's funny now, my goal at the time was to make $1,000 a month. And as I read this email that John did $1 million in 18 hours, like, I remember sitting there for like 5 minutes and just thinking like the 4-minute mile was broken. I was like, a dude just like me and you made $1 million in a day. I was like, I don't know if I can make $1 million a day, but I bet I can make $1 million in a year. It became possible for me. Just like when Roger Bannister broke the 4-minute mile, then like afterwards, like everyone did it. And I know for me, I don't know if it affected you as well, but like, I was like, John Reese made $1 million. I'm going to make $1 million. And like, within like 2 years, I made $1 million in a month. And then later I made $1 million, in a year. Later I made $1 million a month. Later I did $1 million a week. And multiple times I've done $1 million in a day. And it was because like John Reese did, so I knew I could do it. And so for us inside my community, I'm like, what's the 4-minute mile? I want all of our people striving towards something, like something that they can believe. And, you know, in our business, like you always talk about $1 million, like that's always a goal. Like, I don't think it was very real for people. And so as I was thinking through this, I was like, well, what could be our 4-minute mile? And so I had Dave on our team. I was like, go back into ClickFunnels and like, let's see how many people have actually made at least $1 million in the funnel. Like, I don't know, of our 40,000 members, how many have actually made $1 million? And we found out last year, basically, there were 93 people in the first year of ClickFunnels made $1 million in the funnel. I was like, that's a lot of people. And so I was like, I want to give these people recognition, number one, but I also want to give everybody else in our community belief that they can do it. And so we got these big, huge trophies, and the huge gold record has 2 commas in it, called the 2 Comma Club. In our last event, we had everyone come on stage and we gave these huge trophies that said, you're in the 2 Comma Club. And you saw that it was crazy. We had 1,500 people at our event, and there was a line of 93 people in this line, and each person came up and they got 2 Comma Club awards. You know, person after person after person after person.
That's huge, man. That's essentially $93 million plus worth of success and revenue.
And some people had like 2 or 3 awards because they've done it multiple times. And what's cool is all these people looked in there, and every single one of them, like that day, they believed that they could make $1 million in a funnel. Before that, it was like, oh, that'd be cool. But like they saw their peers, people just like they were sitting in the audience next to them. 93 of them had already done it that in the last 12 months. And it caused belief. And now like on my side, what's insane is that I'm watching my audience, and like our rate of how many people, I have people that are hitting 2 Comma Club is like we had 11 in the last shipments, 11 in the last like 20, 30 days have just broken it. And like it keeps like increasing the speed because we gave them belief. And so it's like when you're moving, like what is that thing? Like what are you trying to, like what's the end result people want, right? Like people come into business because they want a result. So what's that result? And then make that a tangible, real thing that they can get, and they will go crazy. Like as soon as they believe they can do it, they can do it. But they have to believe. And so when you make it real, like that's the key. And we did it with the 2 Comma Club Award. I tell you what, man, that has been one of the most amazing things that it's interesting. If you ask anyone at our event, like, what's your goal? In our community, like, what's your goal? Like the 2 Comma Club. I want to be the 2 Comma Club. Like that's what they want, and they all believe it now. And like, it's insane. It's
That's
cool.
awesome, man. Super cool. Super cool. What other parts are in the book that you can share with folks?
So after we kind of get through like the initial framework, right? Here's how mass movement's been built. And then like I kind of go through again, like kind of what we did right now. I walk through like the specific things that we did to try to accomplish that. Then like the next phase of this is like, okay, now we got people listening to us, and we have our own products which we're trying to sell, but like how do we sell people? Like how do we get people to buy stuff from us? And it's interesting, like when I got started, and you know, Mike, when you and I were first students, like everyone was talking about copywriting, right? Like how do you write good copy, and studying headlines and like all that kind of stuff. And so like I spent 10 years doing that. It's interesting because I mean that stuff works at a transactional level. Like it can get people to convert and to buy. But what I found as I've been doing this stuff is like the best copywriting is just really, really good storytelling. And it's like, so how do you tell a story in the right way that'll get somebody to believe something? And so as you guys go into the book, like I have this concept. There's a chapter here called the Epiphany Bridge, and it's kind of the foundation for everything. Like if you look at how most people sell stuff, and the first time I think I had this, I was actually I built a funnel for this one network marketing company, and they gave me some equity in the company for doing it, which was really cool. And then they wanted me to come speak at one of their events. And so to their leadership team or whatever. So I came out speaking to the leadership team, and as I get to the hotel, I walk in, and like I love the network marketing industry, like amazing people, but amazing people who I don't feel like often have the tools that they need to actually get people to buy their products. So I walk in this room, and it's a weight loss company, and everyone's got spandex on, they got their t-shirts, and they're like so excited, right? And I'm watching the lobby, and I'm seeing these people run around, and I remember there's like all of them had the same t-shirt on. It was like ketones are greater than glucose, which is like super like if I hadn't written a pitch video,
horrible shirt.
Oh yeah, if I hadn't written a pitch video for this thing, I would have like, what are they talking about?
Yeah.
Right? I didn't know what those words even meant, either of them.
Right.
And they're running around, and I'm watching these people like, and they're seeing people in the lobby, and they're running up to them, and they're like, blah, and they're like spewing out like these big old technical words like ketones and glucose and beta hydroxybutyrate salts, and I'm watching this, and I'm like watching these poor little like prospects like freak out and run away from these guys, right? And I'm kind of laughing. And then I go down.
I'm sorry, I'm just saying, but that's like traditional, the stereotypical network marketing experience, right? So.
Yeah, which is why it has such a bad negative connotation, right?
Yeah.
Like, and it's like, so it was comical because I'm laughing at them going through here, and I walk into this group, and it was their leadership team. So I think there was like 120 people or so in this room. And it was kind of a fun, I thought I was speaking like 4 or 5 hours later, and I was going to plan something and prepare. And as I walked through the door, it turned out I was on stage at that exact moment. And so they introduced me, and as I'm walking up, like, hey, what are you going to talk about? He's like, whatever you want. And I'm like, crap. So I get up there, and I get to the front of the audience. I look back, and I'm looking at the sea of people who are so passionate about their product, right? And all you guys, it doesn't matter what, if it's your own product or not, like, you're passionate about your product, right? I can see it in their eyes. And then I also see like the hurt and the pain that they have in their eyes, knowing that like every time they try to share their message with other people, like people run away and they get scared and they get nervous. And I'm sitting there, and I was like, I know what's wrong. And so I drew this little stick figure on the board, and I said, this right here, this was all of you guys before you were introduced to this opportunity. Okay. And you were living a normal everyday life. Like everything was fine. And I asked them, like, do you guys remember what life was like before you became an entrepreneur? Like everything was fine. You woke up in the morning, you watched TV, you went to school, you went to whatever. Like life was just kind of normal. Then something happened to you that totally screwed you up, right? In a good way. Like something like for me, like it was like when I learned I could sell stuff online, like I had this epiphany and it was like, holy crap, like this is the future. For everyone that was in that room, it was like weight loss. I'm like, something happened where you took this product and you had an experience, like something amazing happened, right? I'm like, do you guys remember that experience? Like, what was it for you? If you ever listen to the podcast, think about it. For whatever business you're in, what was that thing that happened to you? Because something happened where you were like, this is like this is the key. Like for the rest of my life, I don't want to do anything else besides this, right? It happened to all of us, especially entrepreneurs. Like we always have that moment. And then what happens, the worst thing happens is we have that moment and then we get excited and we're like, oh my gosh, I got to figure this stuff out. And then you start studying and learning and you start geeking out. You read all the blogs and the podcasts and you learn the terminology and you learn all the techie stuff, right? And you like store all this stuff in your brain. And then, and logically you convince yourself that this is the greatest thing in the world. And then you see your prospect and you're like, oh my gosh, this is the person. If they knew all this stuff that I now know, they would get involved because there's so much proof behind what I'm doing. And then you see them in the lobby and you jump on them and you start spewing out all the technobabble you've been storing of, all the logic you have now convinced yourself of. You try to convince them with that logic. And that's why it freaks people out, because there's not a single person on planet Earth that's ever bought something logically, ever. Okay? They rationalize things logically, and they justify them logically, but they buy things emotionally. Okay? Like you didn't get into that thing that nobody came to you and logically convinced you that ketones, for these guys, like ketones was the greatest thing in the world. What happened is somebody gave you this thing, you drank it and it felt good. Or you saw somebody who was overweight and then they lost a bunch of weight that you knew and like you wanted that. Like there was some experience that happened that they gave you an emotional connection, and then you went and you geeked out and you learned all the technobabble and all the nerdy stuff. And I went back and said, like, for you guys to understand, like, if you want to sell people, you have to stop using the technobabble. You have to stop trying to logically convince people. All you have to do is go back into your timeline and remember what it was that gave you that emotional experience, that epiphany that you had that got you excited. And then your job as a marketer is just to find people and tell them that story. And if you tell them the story in the right way, what's cool is that people, if you do it right, they will have the same epiphany that you had. You know, I want to make sure I explain this right, because the first time I explained this, I saw people coming, they started going like, let me tell you the epiphany I had. And they go and they try to shove this thing. And like, that's when I realized that funnels are the greatest thing in the world. That's when I realized that ketone, you know, whatever that thing is for you. And it's like, if you tell them the answer, then it's not very strong because they feel like it was forced upon them. You have to tell a story in a way where they have the epiphany. Okay. So an example of that, at the second Funnel Hacking Live event that we did, Marcus Lemonis, who is the TV show The Profit, he was our keynote speaker. And I just think he's the coolest guy in the whole world. So in the speaker contract, I was like, you have to spend 30 minutes with Russell before you speak so he can prep you on the event. But I just really want to hang out with him. Like that was my goal, right? So the contract said that. So I had this 30-minute window before he spoke. And so he comes into this little room he had set up, and he came in and he looked kind of confused. He's like, I thought I was coming to like a website building conference or something. He's like, I'm like, yeah, it's called, we're called ClickFunnels. He's like, why is everyone outside going so crazy? Like these guys are jumping around screaming. I'm like, oh, well, like it's kind of like we're really passionate about this whole thing. Like, you know, and he's like, okay, so what is a funnel? What's a ClickFunnel? I don't understand. And so instantly, of course, I slip into technobabble mode. And I'm like, well, you know, you set up a funnel and like you try to increase the average cart value. And like, he's looking at me like, I got no idea what you're talking about. And I'm like, oh crap, I'm doing technobabble. And I stepped back and I was like, well, let me explain to you kind of my story. I told a really quick story about like why I did funnels. And I didn't tell him like, and that's when I realized every business needs a funnel, Marcus. I just told him my story, and then Marcus sat there thinking for a second. He's like, huh. So he's like deep in thought, and he's like, so every business needs a funnel. I was like, yeah. He's like, what about Camping World? Like, what would you do there? And I told him, he's like, what about Sweet Peas? What about, and he asked me 4 or 5 different companies that are in his portfolio. And he's like, huh, every business needs a funnel. So he had the epiphany. And then his next thing was like, do you want to be on the show? I was like, heck yeah. But it was because he had the epiphany. So I told the story in a way that set up the environment so that he had the same epiphany that I had. And that's the key, because then it's his idea, not mine. And then what happens after he has the epiphany, he'll go out and like logically convince himself and his staff and his team that it's the greatest thing in the world. I don't have to do that. And so the last half of the book is really that, like understanding like that's how you sell something. Like I don't sell you anything by like being a slick salesman or even, I mean, if you look at really good copywriting, it's really good storytelling, right? I tell a story in a way that gets you to have the same epiphany I had. And if you have that, then you'll go and you'll sell yourself on afterwards. And so that's the epiphany bridge. And what's cool is when I first got that, like I understood it and I told a lot of stories. I didn't know like what was the process. And it was interesting. I had a chance to meet a guy named Michael Haig, who he's done a couple courses that called the Hero's Two Journeys. And he actually works in Hollywood as a screenwriting consultant. Is that I don't know if that's the right term for it. But he's like best friends with like Will Smith and all these guys. It's like when they have a screenplay they want to write, they come to Michael and they're like, okay, does it fit inside the Hero's Two Journeys? And if you look at pretty much every successful movie or play from the beginning of time till today, they all follow the exact same story structure. It's really fascinating. And as you watch it, it's like, he was showing me, he's like, if you look at the screenplays from like Titanic or Rocky or Terminator or Avatar, whatever, like all of them, he's like, you look at it and like on page 23 in the script is when this happens to the hero, and then page 36 is when this, and like they all follow the exact same storyline. And he showed me that whole thing. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that's the key to story. And so I actually had him come to one of our events and he spent a day and a half teaching Hero's Two Journeys. And I was like flipping out, so excited. And I was like, all right, Michael, how do people like me who want to sell stuff, how do we use this? And he's like, I don't know. I'm like, really? He's like, no, but if you figure it out, let me know. And I was like, crap, because like this is the key. Like every good story since the beginning of time, like that's what it is. And so anyway, it's kind of funny. In the book, I have a chapter called The Hero's Two Journeys, and I took everything that Michael taught in a day and a half of my event, and I if you ever read my books, I doodle everything out. So I doodled it out into a graph, and I was like, that's what he's talking about. Like there it is. But I was like, that's a complex thing. Like that's how you tell a story in a 2.5, 3 hour period, like a movie. How do we as storytellers, what's the framework we want to tell that story? The Hero's Two Journeys. Well, sometimes we may have 2 minutes. We have a Facebook Live and we got 2 minutes we can tell a story, or maybe I got a webinar, I got 90 minutes. Like how do we do that? How do we create a script and a process that ebbs and flows in the format we need? And so I spent the next 18 months writing and rewriting and testing to the point where we got this script that's like, this is how you tell the Hero's Two Journeys, how you tell your Epiphany Bridge story, and you can do it in a really fast or really short period of time. And so if you guys get the book, hopefully you do, but if you get the book, and you go to secret number 8, which is page 114, there's some doodles that kind of take you through, like, here's the Hero's Two Journeys. Then on page 115, there's basically 8 questions. And if you just answer these 8 questions, you tell a story that has all of the story structure you need to tell the story the right way. And I don't know if we have time to go into it or not, but that's the script. I have this on my desk, and I probably tell 200 stories a day between my podcast and my interviews, like all the stuff. And I just follow this script over and over and over again.
Yeah, let's dive in. We've got about 15, 20 minutes left. Let's go for it.
Oh, cool. All right. And one caveat before we go into it, so this will work for you. Like, let's say you're going to do a Facebook Live, promote something, or a webinar, or whatever, or you're telling a story, or you're at an event. Like, it works, but like, I'm going to show you one cool thing. So just to just get the wheels in your head spinning, how else you can use this before we dive into it. So, Kaylin, who's the Lady Boss Weight Loss I was talking about earlier. So after we gave her the script, she like mastered it. They did a webinar with this process, and actually it wasn't a webinar, it was a Facebook Live for doing this process. And they did the Facebook Live, did really well, and they started promoting ads to it. And the first 30 days, that Facebook Live made over $1 million in the weight loss market, selling a $150 product. Like, it's insane. They're getting 500 women a day consistently sign up by them telling the story through this process. But what was interesting, so she's a younger girl, and if you look at her, she lifts weights, she has nose rings, she's got tattoos, and there's a demographic that relate to her. But she knew this. She's like, there's a demographic that don't relate to me. Like mothers and moms don't come to me right now. I'm getting all the younger women coming to me, but moms aren't. And she's like, how do I connect with that audience? And she didn't know how to do it. So what she did is she set up like a form on a website, and she took these 8 questions. I'm going to walk through with you guys right here. And she said, okay, question number 1, what's your backstory that gives us the best interesting journey? Number 2, what's your design? And she goes through the whole thing. And then she went to all the moms in her program and said, I would love to interview you live on a Facebook Live. Can you guys go and fill out this questionnaire so I know your story? And so all these women went and they told their entire story through this script I'm going to give you guys, like wrote it out. And then she printed it out and she had the entire script written in a perfect way. And then she just interviewed and said, okay, my first question for you is this. And she did it on a Facebook Live, and she started interviewing all these moms, getting their story that fit into this script. And anyway, it's insane. Like, her business did that, and like now she is killing it in the mom markets. She has moms telling their story through this thing. And so like we use this now for testimonials. We use this now for our own, like there's not a day that I don't use this probably 30 or 40 times in everything we're doing. So Anyway, this will become I think the most valuable tool that you guys could, anyway, but you get nothing else from this. Just print out page 115. It's that good for you guys.
I'm just going to say, hopefully it's clear by now that this is one of the single most valuable books on the planet for entrepreneurs. What you've put together here, brother. I'm just unbelievably shocked that you somehow find the time to dive down these rabbit holes so deep and freaking write a book about it while running a $30 million, $40 million a year business right now. So yeah, I don't know how you do it, man, but thank you. It's freaking awesome.
Oh, that's cool. No, it's just so much fun. It makes it hard to sleep at night because I get so excited. Anyway, hope you guys hear my excitement. That's how excited I am.
That's sweet, brother.
Okay, so I'll walk you guys through the script. So the way it works is every good story starts with a backstory, right? And the reason why is because the audience needs to connect. They need to have a vested interest in your journey, or else they're not going to care what happens, right? Think about every good movie. It starts with the building relationship with the character, right? I just watched with my kids. We just watched all the Lord of the Rings movies recently, right? So Frodo is in the Shire, in his home, and there's this time where we're connecting with Frodo before he leaves on his journey, right? Rocky, there's a time we're connecting with Rocky before he goes on his journey. If we don't connect with him up front, then we don't care about his journey. So the beginning is the backstory where you are sharing your backstory with your audience. Also because a lot of us as entrepreneurs, we love sharing our highlight reel because it makes us feel good. But people see your highlight reel, how great you are, and guess what they don't care about? You, because you don't relate to them. So we come back initially to the backstory where you are in the same spot that they were at, because now they can build rapport. And if they connect with you there, then they have vested interest in your story and in your journey, and they actually care. So the first question here is what is your backstory that gives us a vested interest in your journey? So you tell them yeah, so I was 19 years old, blah, blah, blah. You tell your backstory. Okay. And then inside your backstory, the next question here is your desires. What was it that you wanted to accomplish? Okay. And in every movie, the hero wants to accomplish something. Frodo wanted to destroy the ring. Rocky Balboa wanted to beat Apollo Creed. Lightning McQueen wanted to win the Piston Cup. There's this thing that they want, right? And so there's always this thing that we want to accomplish. And then inside of that, there's two sub questions. So number one is what was the external struggle you're dealing with? What's the external thing you wanted to get? And most people are willing to share this, right? I wanted to make money. I wanted to lose weight. I wanted to diversify my portfolio. I wanted to whatever your business is, right? There's this external result that you wanted. And most people are willing to share. She usually share yeah, so I got in this business because I wanted to make some extra money. And people are oh, cool, they relate to that. But then the second piece here is the key to emotional storytelling. Second one is what was the internal struggle you were dealing with? What was the internal thing you wanted? See, I wanted to make money, but that wasn't the real reason why I wanted. I may have thought that was the reason, but what was the real reason that I went on this journey? Okay, so I started thinking about it, and I'm okay, well, and the way you get to what your internal is, you ask why 50 times. Why did you want to make money? Well, because that'd be awesome. Have some extra money. I can hang out with my wife and I can go on dates or something. That'd be awesome. Okay, well, why do you want to do that? Well, because if I spend more time with my wife, then she's gonna like me more. That'd be pretty cool. Cool. Then why? Why do you care about that? Well, and you keep going deeper and deeper and deeper until you get to the actual raw emotion of why you actually want this. And usually people want things. It's not people don't want to lose weight because they want to lose weight. They want to lose weight because last week they were going to church and they put their belt on and it was so tight it felt uncomfortable. And they were looking at their kids and they're how are my kids going to respect me if I can't, I can't even, that's the real reason. That's the internal desires you had is you want to lose weight so you can be with your kids or so your spouse will love you or so your parents will be impressed with or whatever that is for you. And so during this backstory, I'm sharing my external desire, but I'm also sharing the internal things that I really wanted. And when you do that, a couple of things. First off, you become vulnerable and it's really awkward at first, but your audience that's listening to you, they have the same external desire, but they really want the same things that you want internally. And when you're willing to share, here's the reasons why I was really going on this journey, what happens is people connect. That's where you get the initial connection. God, I want my dad to love me too. That's the real reason. Money's cool, but I just want time to be with my family.
Well, and I don't mean to interrupt you too, Russell, here, but I think it's unbelievably important because there's so few people who are willing to be vulnerable like that it instantly takes down their levels of skepticism to wow, Russell's willing to share that kind of personal stuff with me. And I just think that's super important too.
It's the key. The difference between a good story and a great story is your willingness to be vulnerable and share that. Yeah, because no one talks about it. No one's willing to do that. When you do that, they're wow. And
you're different. You're totally different than anybody else they've ever met.
Yeah. All right, cool. So we got backstory, then we talk about desires, external and the internal. And by the way, if you look at the hero's two journeys, every hero leaves with an external goal, right? and we call these two things. One's the journey of achievement. So Rocky Balboa wanted to achieve something, wanted to beat Apollo Creed. Then there's the journey of transformation. And like the second journey, the hero's journey, is like the invisible one that we don't see, but it's the one we care about at the end, right? Lightning McQueen did not win the Piston Cup in part one. He failed his journey of achievement. But the second journey, which is this internal struggle, is like he got friends. He became someone better, right? And so initially during this thing, we're talking about the external and the internal because this is us setting up the hero's two journeys of where we're actually going in the story. Okay, so now the backstory, at the end of the backstory, now like we have this thing we want, this result. We want to lose weight, make money, whatever it is, right? Frodo needed to destroy the ring, like, and what happens in every good story is like the hero has to physically leave the location that they're at, right? Frodo had to leave the Shire, like whatever movie you want to plug and think about, like the hero always leaves. And so for you, it's like you were in this situation and you hit a wall. Okay, typically if you come back to what we talked about, the initial framework of the mass movements, right? The opportunity that you were currently in to get your result, you hit a wall with it. So if you're in weight loss, I was in the Atkins diet and I hit a wall. I could not progress. I hit this wall. And so the next question, number 3 here is, what was the wall or the problem that you hit within your current opportunity that started you on this new journey? So I got so frustrated, like trying to make money in this way. I hated my job so bad. Like whatever the current wall that you hit, that you're in, that you hit this thing and you hit that wall, and it's like, I have to leave. I have to go somewhere else to figure out the answer to this thing, right? And so you leave on this journey. So that's question number 3. Question number 4 then is, what was the epiphany you experienced and the new opportunity you discovered? Okay, so again, this is tying back to the new opportunity we talked about in the very beginning of this call, which is the mass movement. Like, okay, so I went on this journey and I started what it was like for Dave Asprey. It's like I went up in the mountains and I drank this yak butter and all of a sudden I felt good. And I had this epiphany. Oh my gosh, like fat's going to make me actually lose weight or actually make me feel better, right? So the epiphany you had, this goes back to the epiphany bridge, we talked about everything like that. The epiphany and the new opportunity. And then after that, then it's like, okay, I had this epiphany. Like, what if I could actually generate leads online? What if it was a funnel? What if, whatever your epiphany is. And then you transition to like, okay, now I had this epiphany. This was the new opportunity. This was the thing I thought it was going to be. Then you transition to the plan. So like, what was the plan? All right. So I decided I'm going to go try this thing out. I'm going to see how it works. And you go on this plan. You map out the plan. And you're kind of taking through the journey of this thing as you're trying to achieve the end goal. And then one thing Michael Hay talked a lot about in Hero's True Journey is like, a story without conflict is boring. People don't engage. So it's like, as you were executing this plan, like, share the conflicts you had, share the failures. That again is what makes people have a vested interest in this story. So what was the conflict you were experiencing along the way? And then the end of it, now here's where the Hero's Two Journeys break off. So now it's like, what was the journey of achievement? What was your end result? So like, I achieved that. Actually, I was able to finally quit my job and have that thing. I was finally able to lose like 30 pounds. Like, you achieved the external goal, but then the one people care about is the number 8 is the journey of transformation. What was the transformation you experienced? So not only did I achieve my goal, lost a lot of weight, but the coolest thing is like the next week I went with my daughter and I went to her soccer game, and after the game I went out and actually played soccer with her. And like, it was the coolest thing to be able to connect with my daughter in this cool way that I wasn't able to do before because I was so unhealthy, right? And that ties back to the internal desire we talked about earlier. And so that's it. So the backstory, your desires, external and internal. Then you hit a wall. From the wall, you left on this journey and you had an epiphany. You found this new opportunity. You figured out a plan. You went through the plan. You had some conflict along the way. And eventually you achieved something, but you transformed in the process. And you were able to achieve both your external and your internal desires. And that's the Epiphany Bridge script.
So let me pick your brain on this, right? Because if you're going to, let's just say, write a sales webinar based on this framework, this could essentially be compacted down into as little as 10 or 15 minutes.
Yep.
At which point, it sounds like the end of that framework, the next transition stage would be then to transition into all about the audience, right? And going from your story and I, me, my to, you. Because that's going to be a concern. That's a huge trap that people fall into. I still have to consciously make sure that I don't do it these days, which is, you keep hearing, sell by telling a story. And if it's a story about, your previous history and what you just went over, it's really easy to get sucked into you being at the center of all of it. And at some point you have to transition it to where the audience is the sole focus of it. So when do you do that? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So that's an awesome question. So after in the book, we go through the storytelling, then we transition to how I do my presentations. I call it the perfect webinar, but it works in any situation. So if you look at that, there's 4 stories we tell inside the perfect webinar. Number 1 is your origin story. So that's what we talked about right now. Like, what was the thing that gave you that initial epiphany, got you excited? And if you do the origin story right, a lot of times that's all people need to then follow you, buy your thing, whatever it is. But what generally happens is after you tell your epiphany bridge story, your initial one, your origin story, people get excited, but then all of a sudden all the fears start coming, right? And there's 3 fears that come up in people's mind to keep them from buying. The first is like their fears and their false beliefs about this new opportunity you're giving to them, right? Number 2 then is like their fears about and their false beliefs about their ability to actually execute on that thing. And then number 3 are like the external things that they think might keep them back from success. So I do my presentations. I lead with my initial origin story. I tell them that, and I come down and say, okay, now I'm going to break down 3 things. Number 1 is a lot of you guys right now are excited, but you're like, well, how's funnels going to work for me? Like I have this kind of like whatever the thing is, right? So, and I go into that and I start directly talking about their false beliefs about this thing that I'm trying to share with them. And then I go and I try to tell a story that helps them to break that false belief. And sometimes the story's about me, sometimes it's about somebody else, sometimes it's about that I'm telling a story that's hopefully going to trump their belief. And so one of the exercises you'll do in the book is I have you build out an inventory of stories that you're going to be using through these presentations. But what's cool about it is if you look at the process, the first question I ask is like, okay, what's the false belief that your customer has? And so I'm going to use network marketing as kind of a fun and easy one in this situation. So let's say like you approach them with network marketing opportunity. What's the false belief they have initially? It's like, oh, well, I can't join network marketing because if I do, my friends and my family members are going to hate me. Okay, that's a false belief someone might have. So then you got to say, okay, here's the false belief. And my next question then is, what was the experience they probably had that gave them that false belief? So I think through, okay, what was the experience they had? Well, they probably joined a network marketing company in the past maybe, and they started calling, their friends and family people on their cell phone, and they had really bad experience. And so they quit. And in their mind, they're like, oh, I don't want to do this. That was really, really bad. Or maybe like their sister joined one and their sister started calling them every single day trying to sign them up. And they're like, they just had a bad experience, right? My question was, what's the false belief they have? And then what was the experience that they had that gave them that false belief? So I try to think about that. And then I shift like, okay, so what's the story that they're telling themselves? So the story they're telling themselves is that if I was to join a network marketing program, even if I could make money, I'm going to offend a lot of people along the way. It's going to be painful. It's just not worth it to me. So that's their story. Okay. So as soon as I know like this is the story that people have inside their head, my job now in the webinar or the presentation or whatever it is to give them a new story. Because I have to replace their false beliefs with the actual truth. And so I might come back and say, man, like it's interesting. A lot of people get into network marketing and they think that they gotta talk to their friends, their family members. And it's interesting. I thought the same thing. In fact, I tried 2 different programs and I quit because I hated it. But then guess what? I met this guy and I jumped into backstory, right? I met this guy. His name is Mike Dillard, and he came out with this book. And it was called Magnetic Sponsoring. And I was like, I don't want to do this again, but maybe there's something there. So I read the book, and in there he talked about the fact that I don't have to actually go and talk to my friends and family. I can actually set up a website and then find people who are interested, and I could drive them to it, and then they'll give me their information. Then I just talk to people who actually are interested. And I was like, well, you're saying if I did this, I don't talk to any of my friends and my family members. And like, yeah, that's what he said. So when I tried it, and I tell this whole story now, and when I get done with this story, at the end of it, they're like, if I do a good job of it, it's like, I want them to have the epiphany of like, wow, I don't have to talk to my friends and family members. Like Russell read Mike's book, and that's what he learned. And like, that's true for me too. And they have this new epiphany. All of a sudden that new epiphany, like it replaces the false belief pattern and it becomes their new belief. And like, that's my goal in stories is like, I'm always trying to figure out what's the false belief they have that's holding them back from moving forward with me. And then what was the thing that happened to them, like the experience they had that made them believe that. It's because of what's their story. And then like, what story do I have? Like, why don't I believe that? There's something that happened in my life that's the reason why I don't believe that. So I just got to tell them that story. And if I do a good job of it, then that story will become their new story, and then their old false belief is gone, and the new like, actual empowering belief becomes their new belief pattern, and that's kind of the goal of it.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. I've gone through your webinar training, and it's just absolutely fantastic. I can't believe you crammed all of this into one book.
Yeah, it's a lot of work.
It is literally on my desk. I've made myself. Essentially, I've pledged to myself that I have to finish a book that I start before I start a new one. And right now I'm finishing up one, and then yours is next online. But that's super exciting, brother. So where can people go to get a copy of it?
Yeah, so we are doing a cool promotion right now where you guys get free copies if you just go to expertsecrets.com. I think you cover like $7.95 shipping handling in the US or $12 international, and then we ship it out to you. And yeah, like it's I just want you guys to know it's not like a lot of books you read, especially in our market, that's like you read it, it's a big sales pitch for something. Like that's not what this is. This is 18 months of my life putting in everything that we've been doing to grow a company from 0 customers to 41,000. And it's the process and the path, I believe, to sell anything really effectively. And I just wanted to share with everybody. I hope you guys get it and you study it and you learn it, because it'll have a big impact on a couple of things. First off, like I believe I honestly believe, it's why I wrote, like I believe it'll change people's lives. But like more importantly is it'll give you guys who get it the ability to change other people's lives. And that's the key. I don't know what you might, but like my own successes are cool. Like I celebrate. It's like, yay, we did really good. But like when somebody you affect and you help has that and it changes their lives, like that's like a million times better. And that's what this book's all about. It's helping you to like have the tools you need, become an expert so you can influence other people and you can change their lives through the products and services you have.
Absolutely. That's what absolutely. You know, I remember at my first office that I ever had back actually in the magnetic days, you know, every time we'd get a testimonial and we'd print it and frame it and put it on the wall, and we literally had, you know, close to 100 framed testimonials on the wall just to remind us every single day, you know, when we walked in, why we were doing what we were doing. And it's just awesome, brother. Well, you're making a huge impact. Holy smokes. Last event, 93, you know, new millionaires, frankly, walking across your stage, which is just amazing, brother. So thank you so much. I can personally say this is definitely one of the most valuable episodes we've ever had on the podcast, out of, you know, getting close to 200 now. And I think our audience is going to agree with that as well. So thank you so much for the time. Guys, go get a copy of Expert Secrets at expertsecrets.com. Go check out ClickFunnels. You know, we're using that for a lot of our marketing funnels these days as well. I've based the entire List Grow course off of the platform because it's so much easier to use than what we had previously, you know, featured in List Grow 1. So, Russell, thank you, man. This is awesome, and I can't wait to see you in a couple weeks out in Vegas.
Yeah, man, thanks for having me. I appreciate you, and I love what you're doing, man. I appreciate everything you're doing, and looking forward to hanging out again soon.
Absolutely, brother. Thank you so much, and thank you all for listening. We'll see you next week.